a new story from our novels based on true events. Today's story is a bit different. We can say it's a different kind of horror. I would like to tell you that it contains some sharp details and is intended for adults only. The place of action is Cairo, Egypt, 2020. Hello, emergency police? Who am I speaking with, sir? I want to report something terrifying happening right now. There's a loud scream and banging coming from the neighbor's apartment across from us. But honestly, none of us has the courage to intervene or find out what's going on. Give us the address quickly, sir, so we can move. I'm Paul, a police officer, new to the area. The start was a report from someone saying there were screams and banging coming from the apartment across from them. We moved immediately to the address and broke into the apartment, but strangely, the apartment was abandoned, according to the building guard and neighbors. It had been closed for a long time. Of course, we went to the apartment where the report came from, and the surprise was that the apartment where the report originated was also abandoned for a year. What's going on? Who made the report? Could it be a false report? No, I don't think so. I went back to my senses, not understanding anything. At that moment, my colleague Alex met me, laughing and said, "By the way, Paul, you're not the first one this has happened to. It's happened many times before, and every time the result is the same. Everyone in the department knows about this. It happens to every new officer who comes here." Really? And how come no one has looked into this? Who told you that? There was an officer named Jack who looked into it, but now he's in a mental hospital. Yes, a mental hospital. Why? What Jack said, no one believed him, and they said he went crazy. I still don't understand. A report comes from an abandoned apartment, and who called us? Forget about it. Don't stress yourself. No, I won't forget. I need to understand. You're free to do what you want, but your end will be like Jack's. I thought a lot about Alex's words, but in the end, curiosity killed me. I finished work that day and decided to go to the hospital. I moved to the hospital, and when I arrived, I entered with my authority as a police officer and asked about Jack. I found out the room he was in, reached the room, and entered. Jack was sitting on the bed reading a book and enjoying himself. I pulled up a chair, sat next to him, introduced myself, and told him, "I'm convinced you're not crazy. I want to understand what happened and why you're here. I'll tell you everything, but you'll believe what I say?" "Yes, I'll believe you. Honestly, something happened to me related to this, and that's why I want to understand. Did the abandoned apartment call you, or what?" I was very surprised and said, "How did you know?" "Listen to what happened and you'll understand. But before I tell you, the evidence is in the diaries in my office. Read them and you'll know everything." The beginning was with David, an ambitious and outstanding student who got a scholarship in a European country. Of course, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for any young man. At that time, David loved Lena, who lived across from them, and decided to propose to her before traveling. The engagement took place, and David traveled and began studying there. But after he finished his studies and decided to return, the plane crashed and he died. When the body arrived, it was severely disfigured, as if it had fallen into water and fish had disfigured his features. It was a huge shock for everyone, especially Lena, who fell into a deep depression and isolated herself from everyone. During this period, Lena started having many nightmares. She would see David, his body drowning in blood, asking her to save him. She didn't understand how to save him. How can anyone save a dead person? Lena went through a tough time until her family decided to take her to a psychiatrist. A year passed since David's death, and Lena was still thinking about him. One day, Lena was standing on the balcony and saw the most horrifying scene of her life. The apartment of David's family was right across from her balcony, so she could clearly see what was happening inside. Lena saw David, her fiancé, who was supposed to be dead, killing his family one by one in a brutal way. He was tearing their heads off with his hands as if they were dolls. Lena collapsed, losing her ability to speak from the horror of the scene. When we received the report and went to the crime scene, it was a literal slaughterhouse. Blood was everywhere, and no one understood the tremendous force that could make someone kill in such a manner. We investigated a lot, but in the end, David was dead, and the evidence was his death certificate and the buried body. Lena remained in the hospital and later left, but the nightmares became worse than before. David was being tortured in front of her. She would wake up screaming and crying until something very frightening happened. One day, Lena was in her room, standing in front of the mirror, combing her hair, when suddenly the lights went out. She was about to move to get her phone when she heard a voice saying, "Do you still love me, Lena?" The lights came back on at that moment, and David was standing behind her. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. "Help me, Lena, I'm being tortured. I'm dying. Save me." Finally, Lena managed to speak and scream, saying, "How are you alive? Why did you kill your family? What did they do to you? How could you kill them? It's a sin." "I'll explain everything, but you need to help me." "How can I help you?" "You'll go to a place I tell you and do exactly what I ask, and then you'll know how to reach me." The place was the pyramids. Lena didn't understand anything, but she decided to go. She left without telling her family and went there, never to return. Her story stopped there. Her family considered her dead after 3 months of her disappearance. But one day, Shad's mother went out on the balcony screaming, "My daughter has returned! My daughter has returned!" But she didn't know that this return would end tragically. At night, everyone woke up to a terrifying scream. No one approached the apartment, and they reported it. When we broke into the apartment, we found Lena's entire family killed in the same manner as David's family. But this time, no one saw anything, and Lena disappeared after returning. Of course, we distributed Lena's photo to all checkpoints and entrances of the governorates. Lena was the prime suspect in her family's murder, and the investigations began, all leading to dead ends. There were a million questions in my mind. Is David still alive? Did he kill his family? What brought them to this state? And what do the pyramids have to do with it? Until then, a scientist came from a superpower and spoke very seriously. This scientist was killed afterward. By the way, this scientist said that this superpower has an area isolated from all humans. He said this area is a set of laboratories where they conduct experiments on humans, turning them into monsters on Earth. And he also said that they were responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic. But the last part he spoke about was very important. He said that this area sends people to the sites of major accidents, like the plane crash that happened a while ago, and they take survivors to conduct these experiments on them. He spoke about an experiment that, if proven true, would mean the whole world is heading towards a catastrophe. This scientist said that they implanted a chip in the brains of these humans containing their thoughts. And among these thoughts are aggressive ones that make them kill people. Their goal is to reduce the world's population to 1 billion, and they called it the Golden Billion, after which they would rule the world with strict laws that no one could defy. If what you're saying is true, Jack, then David was there, and Lena was there too. But what do the pyramids have to do with it? These people said their beginning would be from the pyramids. The things you're saying are serious, Jack. Go on, I'm listening. During this period, I was busy with my wife, and we had many disagreements. But I noticed that her outings increased. I asked her, and she said she had met a woman from the neighbors, and they became friends. I didn't pay much attention to the matter, and I wish I had, because what I discovered was that the woman my wife had met was Lena. Yes, you heard right, it was Lena, and I found out too late. One day, my wife called me and said she had invited her friend for lunch. I said, okay, I'll be late from work anyway. I finished work that day and returned home. I opened the door and was shocked by the scene. My wife was lying on the floor, killed, and her brain was separated from her body. I screamed and collapsed on the floor. Literally at that moment, the neighbors gathered, and I found myself accused of her murder. I came here to be declared insane. I'm not crazy, I swear I'm not crazy, believe me. Trust me. Jack, this is the key to my office. You'll find diaries there. Lena is there, read them carefully, but I have a question. Before I leave, why did we get that call from the abandoned apartment at that time? I don't have any explanation, but one thing is certain, the spirits are not at rest. The spirits of the people who died are still being tortured. I left Jack and exited the hospital, holding the key to his office. I went to the office, opened it, and started searching everywhere until I opened a drawer and found diaries labeled Lena. I opened them and started reading. I was certain that David was still alive, but the person who came to me now was not the person I once loved. He was more like a machine, programmed, telling me he survived after the plane crash, that suddenly he found people carrying him, and he thought he was saved. But when he woke up, he found himself in a large glass tank filled with tubes, wires, and a green liquid surrounding him. After that, they performed brain surgery on him and implanted a chip in his brain. David asked me to help him, saying I had to go there. When I asked him where there was, he told me to go to the pyramids at 12 midnight, perform certain rituals in front of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, and then I would be able to reach him and help him. I finished reading Lena's diaries up to this point. I still can't believe I'm living through these events. I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my boss at work, Colonel Leo, asking to see me. I went to him even though I was planning to go home because I was exhausted. He spoke to me and said, "Paul, I heard you're interested in the call you received from the abandoned apartment. I'm telling you, forget about it and focus on your work." "Understood, sir." I left his office confused by his anger about the matter. As I was leaving, the work phone rang. We received a new report about a crime in an upscale neighborhood. We quickly moved to the scene, and what we found was horrifying. 2 bodies, a recently married couple, killed, their heads severed from their bodies. The same scene was repeating itself. I went back to Colonel Leo, trying to convince him to open old case files and gather evidence, but he refused. For the first time, I felt like my job was restricting me, and I couldn't move freely. Finally, I returned home. That day, I was extremely tired and exhausted. I went straight to sleep, but the events of the day piled up into a nightmare, like fragmented images and overlapping scenes. I woke up in a panic looking for my wife beside me, but she wasn't there. I searched for her, but she was gone. I called her, and she said she was with a friend and would be back soon. I got up, went to the bathroom, and got ready for work. On my way, I passed by someone I knew who was into mysterious events and asked him about what was happening. He replied, "That's an isolated area ruled by Satan himself, according to information on Google. They say there's a throne for Satan, and he gives them orders. Everything you've heard is true, and what's hidden is even greater." I went to work and found a case file from yesterday, classified as unknown. Wow, to this extent, they don't want us to trouble ourselves. I went to Colonel Leo and said, "I'm resigning, sir. I don't know how I did it. How did this topic take over my thoughts like this and make me lose my future?" I returned home and found my wife had just come back. She told me she was with a friend and had invited her for lunch. I went to the bathroom, but suddenly I remembered Jack's words. I asked her, and she said she had met a neighbor and they became friends. I didn't pay attention to the matter, and I wish I had, because what I discovered later was that the friend my wife had met was Lena. I found out too late. One day, my wife called me and said she had invited her friend for lunch. I said, "Okay, I'll be late from work anyway." I finished work that day and returned home. I opened the door and was shocked by the scene. My wife was lying on the floor, killed, her head severed from her body. I opened the bathroom door, running to see who was there. As I expected, Lena was standing at the door. I dragged myself to my room, and without her noticing, I took out my personal weapon and hid it in my clothes. I had decided I would kill her and rid people of her evil. I couldn't even call her human because she wasn't human. She was a robot created to destroy the world. I'm sure they've made millions like her. I went out to the living room. My wife was preparing the table, and Lena was sitting in complete silence, not speaking, just looking at me with a provoking smile, as if to say, "You can't do anything." My wife went into the kitchen, busy preparing the food, and I took the opportunity to ask Lena, "What brought you here? I know you, and I know who's behind you." Good that you know me. I'm here to finish you off because you're looking for us. But don't worry, no one can stop us. No one can stand in our way. We will succeed, Lena. At that moment, I was about to pull out my weapon and shoot her, but I was surprised when she said, "Be careful, your son is coming out of the room. No weapons, no weapons." "What weapon are you hiding in your clothes?" How did she know? But she stood up and said to my wife, "I'm sorry, I have to leave. There's a problem at home." She left, leaving me with a warning to stop looking for them and to stop being curious. But how can I stay silent? Impossible. I have to continue and find out the whole truth. Of course, I was afraid for my wife and son, the only people I have in this world. I decided to go back to the hospital to see Jack because I wanted to understand if my presence prevented her from killing them or if she wasn't there to kill them in the first place. I took my car and went to the hospital. When I reached Jack, the first thing he said was, "I knew you'd come back. Tell me what happened." "I'll tell you, but I have a question. Lena was at my house, but she didn't kill my wife and son like she did with you. Was she afraid of my presence? Or was she just there to warn me?" No, and the answer I have might worry you. It's clear they want to recruit you. No one can stop her if she wanted to kill them. She would have done it. My phone rang. It was my wife calling to tell me that Lena had called her and wanted to come over to spend some time with her. I left the hospital in a hurry to catch her before Lena arrived. I managed to catch her, and without any introductions, I took her and my son to my mother-in-law's house. After that, I returned to the hospital. I asked about Jack and went to his room as usual, but he was in the bathroom. I waited for a while. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Too long. At that moment, the nurse came in to give him his medicine. I said, "I was just about to call one of you. Jack has been in the bathroom for too long, and I'm worried about him." "Okay, I'll check on him now." She knocked on the door once, twice, but there was no response. I felt the nurse was worried. She opened the door and screamed. I rushed over, but when I saw the scene, I understood. Jack's head wasn't severed from his body as you might be thinking now. No, not at all. Jack had died in a more gruesome way. His skin was completely peeled off, and his eye sockets were empty. The scene was disgusting and nauseating, something you couldn't bear to look at. Of course, everything turned upside down. There were investigations, and I was interrogated because I was the last person with him before he died. Fingerprints were lifted from the scene, but there was no lead. No one wanted to believe what I was saying. They said I had gone mad. Colonel Leo was called, and he said to me, "What are you planning to do next?" "What do you mean, sir? Why don't you believe me?" "No, I believe you now after hearing Dr. Adams' words. He's an expert in the paranormal, and he told me everything. But he said we need to plant someone in their midst to report back to us exactly what's happening there." "What do you mean, sir? I don't understand." "We need someone to go there and record everything, audio and video, and that person is you. We need to hurry before everything is completely destroyed. Between you and me, even if you don't come back, we've agreed." I sat with Dr. Adam, and he gave me a small recording camera to hide in my clothes and record everything that would happen there. He told me, "You'll go to the pyramids at 12 midnight. You'll draw this symbol on a specific stone in the Great Pyramid, and a passage will open in front of you. You'll walk through it and reach them, Paul. They'll take you with them. Go and come back safely." I looked at him, wanting to say, "You and I both know I'm not coming back." I said goodbye to my family, took everything I needed, and went to the pyramids. I'll leave you with Dr. Adam, who will tell you exactly what's happening. "Good evening. I'm Dr. Adam." Paul entered the passage, and someone attacked him, injected him with a sedative, and then moved him to another place. It's clear now that they've taken him to a plane. After 24 hours, Paul arrived at a place isolated from the world. Let me describe the place to you. A very wide area with masked soldiers carrying modern weapons guarding it. There's a wide corridor, and on both sides of it are glass boxes containing many people connected to their bodies with wires and tubes. Inside the boxes is a sticky green substance. But what's this? There's a large throne with someone sitting on it. The camera's about to capture it, but suddenly we heard a scream. It was Paul's scream, and the connection was cut off. I don't need to tell you that Paul isn't coming back, or if he does, he'll be like the others I saw. The coming days are very difficult, and the danger is close to us. The war now isn't a war of weapons, it's a war of minds. And with that, our story for today ends. Don't forget to like and share the video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our new videos. Thank you.